Hundreds of historic monuments and government buildings across Germany are turning off the lights, non-essential ones, that is. The country is racing to reduce its energy consumption in the face of a looming Russian gas crisis. And public fountains are also being switched off to save power. Hanover in the northwest was the first large city to turn off hot water in public buildings, and that means cold showers at swimming pools, sports halls and gyms. It's also banned the use of portable air conditioning units and heaters. Now, all this comes after Russia dramatically reduced Germany's gas supply. Residents have been told to expect sweeping gas reduction measures and extra charges on their electricity bills. For more on this, Trent Murray joins us from Berlin. Trent, what has the public's reaction been to these sweeping energy-saving measures?
Well, I think, Dawn, it's certainly starting to concentrate minds. It's starting to feel very real. Of course, for many months we've been reading about these possible energy shortages coming down the line, but we are now really starting to see some very tangible action happening on the ground. And that is because, as you say, all of the efforts right now are trying to save as much gas as possible. Effectively, what the government is trying to do here is prevent gas being used for power generation right now and instead divert those supplies into storage. Now, it's not, of course, easy, particularly when you have got your gas flow levels kind of going up and down based on what Gazprom, Russia's state-backed gas firm, is doing on its main pipeline. But speaking to people here, and I've come back from a work event where it was very much part of the discussion, some people will say, you know, maybe the government's overhyping this and I think everything will be okay, whereas others will say, well, I'm actually genuinely really worried about the winter and whether there's going to be enough heating and whether it's going to be cold. So effectively, I think what you are seeing is small measures, as you say, lights being switched off on big monuments, including here in Berlin, and cold water in public gymnasiums and showers. But I think the idea is every little action helps and will add up eventually to make a big difference to maybe just try and help Germany get through the winter. But politicians here are certainly very nervous about it.
Well, it's summer now, but not everyone's a fan of those cold showers. I mean, the measures in Hanover, Trent, do we expect this to be expanded perhaps to the rest of Germany at some point?
I think we will absolutely see this be rolled out in more places. I mean, Augsburg, which is a smaller city down in Bavaria, this week also made similar moves. It switched off all of its water fountains and is also dimming the street lights. I think we are just going to continue to see this right across the country as a way to try and save energy. Whether the target is realistic or not to try and reduce energy overall by 15% is very hard to say, because certainly the models right now suggest it is, and that could make a big difference. But of course, what the variable in all of this is, we just don't know what will happen to gas supplies. There really is only one person that knows whether gas will continue to flow into Germany from Russia, and that is President Vladimir Putin. Many politicians in Germany do expect that there could be a point where there is a complete cutoff. If that happens, then, you know, we really are into a dangerous territory in terms of energy supplies and the economy. For what it's worth, the government is trying to sort of build up an insurance policy, if you will, by firing up more coal-fired power plants to generate electricity that way. But certainly Germany is a heavy user of gas for its energy. Of course, not just for households, Dawn, but also for those countless factories that exist here. Companies like Volkswagen, BMW and Siemens, they all manufacture a lot. They use a lot of energy, and they are saying that if they're forced to power down at any point because of a shortage, that could have a real ripple-on effect on the German economy.
Still a great deal unknown on this energy concern. Trent, thank you very much for that. Trent Murray there in Berlin.
Germany is just one of many countries wrestling with power shortages. In Australia, authorities are warning of a looming nightmare. Millions of households may soon need to brace for massive price hikes to their power bills. Prices in Australia's biggest electricity market have shot to their highest levels on record. The Australian energy market operator says wholesale power costs for the quarter went up by more than 200% compared to the first 3 months of the year. It adds that failing coal-fired power plants and soaring global gas costs have combined to create unprecedented market disruptions. Let's talk about this energy crisis with Laura Page. She's senior LNG analyst at KPLA. She joins us from London. Laura, Ms. Page, we just heard from our correspondent in Berlin, dimming lights on the street, shutting off fountains, switching off lights at municipal buildings. He says this is helping to focus minds on the crisis at stake here. But they seem, you could argue, random, arbitrary, and possibly futile. What difference do measures like these really make?
Yes, well, certainly the energy crisis is heating up in Europe. We have seen a reduction again in Russian gas supplies to Europe. So they have fallen by 20% to 20% on the Nord Stream 1 pipeline, which is that crucial pipeline bringing Russian gas directly into Germany. So we've seen many countries across Europe try to secure as much gas as possible from the international LNG market and also from regional pipeline suppliers. But this week we've seen the first demand side measures, and we're likely to see those step up over the coming months as we get towards winter. Whether they make a difference really depends on a number of things. We don't know what's going to happen with those Russian gas flows going forward. So as I say, they're at 20% on that Nord Stream 1 pipeline. Are they going to stay at 20% over the winter, or could Russia completely turn off the supplies? The other thing to think about is how cold is it going to be this winter? We don't know that yet. So we need to be preparing for the worst case scenarios, which I think is what the European Commission is doing right now. So preparing for a scenario where Russian gas supplies could fall to zero, and preparing for a scenario where we could have a cold winter. Of course, if it's a cold winter, it means that heating demand goes up, and that drives gas demand and pulls gas out of storage, which means that we could end winter with very low gas storage levels. So every little helps at this point. We're going to see households having to play a part, as well as industries potentially shutting down production, switching to alternative fuels, and the power sector as well. So we're already seeing this taking place. Germany wanting to restart coal-fired power plants as well. So it's really going to be a joint effort across all of those sectors.
All right, you mentioned the European Commission, of course, this week managing to urge all member states to cut their gas use by 15% from the 4-year period from 2017 to 2021. Or even if that can be achieved, and there's a non-mandatory agreement right now, do you feel that will make the big difference between Europe being able to survive a complete cutoff in Russia? Because this measure, as Ursula von der Leyen mentioned, was in the event of a complete cutoff from Russia.
Yes, so the thinking behind this is that they want to reduce gas demand in Europe by 15% over the period 1st of August to the 31st of March. And the thinking behind this is it can save 45 BCM of gas, which is really, really significant. The more gas that we save now, of course, this is starting 1st of August, the more gas that we will have available come the end of winter. So really, you know, this is the programme. It certainly will have an impact. As I say, whether it will stop the lights from turning out will depend on those Russian gas supplies, whether they continue or whether they shut off, and how cold the weather is going to be. So there's going to be very many variables that we need to take into account here as to whether this is going to be effective at keeping the lights on.
All right, Ms. Page, the IMF recently, I don't know if they're affected in your variables, but in their latest reports out in July, they were saying that the EU could manage an up to 70% cut in natural gas from Russia by drawing on alternative supplies, and as you mentioned, LNG as well. Because LNG has a very big problem across the European Union. You've got pinch points, you've got inconsistent kinds of infrastructure. So you've got terminals, but you then do not have pipelines. So these things will take time to build. Short term, maybe you can cope with 70%. What kind of time period are we looking at for the EU to be relatively self-sufficient as far as energy goes?
Well, the European Commission wants to reduce Russian gas supplies to zero by 2027. So there's only so much LNG that we can get in the market at the moment. The market is very tight. We know that there is not much supply coming online. We have still demand in Asia to cope with. So, there's only limited LNG supplies available for this winter. We are building more infrastructure, in particular places like Germany. They're starting up their first LNG import terminals, which hope to be online by this winter and will mean that they can approach the LNG market. But really, it takes 4 years or 4 to 5 years for an LNG plant from construction starting to being fully commissioned. So really, we're not going to see an alleviation in this tightness in the LNG market for another 4 to 5 years at least. So that's going to limit, the diversification away from Russian gas.
And final question, Ms. Page. Of course, whether or not we have these things, we do have them, but all these will come at a cost. So before we crossed you, we were talking about Australia, wholesale prices going up, wholesale power prices for the quarter going up more than 200%. Germany's economy minister warning that each household can look forward to several hundred euros worth added because of gas to the electricity bill by the end of this year. What kind of prices are we going to be looking at in the months ahead as we head into winter?
Yes, so we've seen TTF prices, which is the European gas benchmark, rise to over $60 per MMBTU this week. They were at about $16 per MMBTU this time last year, and they were at $2 per MMBTU in the summer of 2020. So this is a really significant rise that we're seeing in gas prices. We don't see any reduction in gas prices from here on out. Again, it's really going to depend on those Russian gas supplies. So if they do fall to zero, we are likely to see gas prices rise even further. So this is very difficult for consumers, and we're going to have to see, consumers turning off the lights as much as possible to try and help their electricity bills as well as their gas bills by turning down the thermostats.
Thanks for that, Laura Page, Senior LNG Analyst, speaking to us there from London.